Welcome to the Worth Listening podcast, where we focus on having positive and productive conversations around money. I'm your host, Lauren, a 4-time Olympian and certified financial planner. On this show, my guests share their money stories. Everyone has a unique story and experiences both wins and losses when it comes to money. My intent is to give listeners something they can relate to, something that builds their courage to be open and take control of their own money story. When I'm not creating a great show for my listeners, I'm running my company, Worth Winning, where I help individuals and families organize their finances. Check us out at worth-winning.com. All right, now on with the show. Hey, good people. We are about halfway through the year. 2019 is creeping away, but it is not over yet. There is still time to meet your goals, to make changes in your life, to live your best life. So if money is that thing holding you back, if it's a goal that you set at the beginning of the year to say you're going to do something and you haven't done it yet, do not fear. The year is not over. You still got 6 whole months to make a difference in your life. Here's me encouraging you to be awesome, not broke. All right, today I'm excited to have Chad Bonham here to share his money memoir with us. You guys got to excuse me. I have no idea what my voice is. I'm giving you the best I got. Hopefully it is enough. And we're going to do this anyway. So Chad is a filmmaker, author, co-founder of 51 West Entertainment. He has been working in mass media for 29 years. And he's not old, y'all, which means he started as a babe. He's a graduate of the University of Tulsa, a family man, a journalist, an author, a broadcast and film producer, but I'm not done yet. He has also produced and directed 6 feature-length documentaries. As if that's not enough, Chad also does consulting in the film marketing world, and he hosts the CSJ podcast. Yeah, he is a busybody to say the least. And today we talk all about struggling with an abundance mindset. If this is something you've struggled with, you think about things as it pertains to scarcity or there not being enough or never having enough, we gotta change your mindset to one of abundance. Today, you'll learn how Chad was able to use an abundance mindset to go after the career he really wanted. He also shares some really great information about how to handle money in marriage. So yeah, if you're not married yet and thinking about getting married, or if you already got bae and you guys are having a hard time talking about money, you definitely want to listen to this episode. He also talks about how to budget as an entrepreneur when your income is sometimes unpredictable. So get ready and let's listen to Chad share his money memoir. Chad, it is so good to have you on the show today.
Hey, I'm excited to be here, and just to have a conversation with the world famous Lauren Williams is all I needed to feel excited about being on this call. I'm so glad to talk to you.
Hardly world famous, just a simple little financial planner from Rochester, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, okay. If that's what you say, that's fine. We'll go with that.
All right. So I just told everyone a little bit about what you're up to now, but we know every good story has a wonderful introduction. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about where it all got started for you?
Wow. So I'm from Oklahoma, and I know you're from Texas, or you're in Texas now. And so we're really close. I've been to Texas a lot of times, but Oklahoma, small town. My parents were in ministry. My mom was a pastor. My dad was a musician. So I came from really small beginnings, tiny town called Guthrie, Oklahoma. Is kind of where I really started to fall in love with the idea of storytelling and being interested in television and movies and all that good stuff. So that's kind of where my passion started to develop. And it came from a really small background to where we didn't have a lot. And so my financial story is not really much to talk about in the sense of where it came from, because money was always tight. We didn't feel like we were poor, but we were probably pretty darn close. Thankfully, my parents really worked hard, instilled in all of us, me and my 2 sisters, a hard work ethic, and we knew what it was going to take to be successful in life. And so for me, it was through creative arts and then through education and just fighting and clawing my way to where I am now. That's the short Cliff Notes version, but basically just having parents that inspired me and showed me what to do and how to work hard and how to trust God for my future. And that's really how I got here.
I love it. It sounds like you come from a really strong family background, like you said, where everybody was pretty tight knit. So tell me a little bit about what your childhood memories are as it pertains to money in the household, especially growing up in a ministry family.
For 8 years, the first 8 years of my life, my mother was a pastor, which was unusual for there to be a female pastor in any way. But my dad was the music guy. She was the preacher. And we had a really small church, and they would support us somewhat. They would bring food and small offerings here and there. But honestly, it was my dad having to go out and work odd jobs, doing door-to-door sales, being a painter. Later on, after my mom left the full-time ministry, she got into retail, became a manager. My dad continued doing odd jobs. Honestly, it was just me seeing them work hard and being really, not frugal, but just really smart with their money and understanding that everything we got was a blessing in what we had, and just to do what we could with it. We always gave what we could. My dad and my mom were always taking people into the house when they needed assistance, whether it was a relative or someone we'd met through the church. So we just basically had this great example of doing the most with what you had and not being neglectful to still give to people and to share what you did have, even if it didn't seem like there was much. Sometimes we didn't understand it as kids because we were like, hey, we'd like to go out to eat more often. And we couldn't because money was tight or because we were using that money to help somebody else. As a kid, you don't understand that. But as you get older, you're like, wow, that was a great lesson. And it really does help me now to understand the value of money and that it's much bigger than just what I need and what I want in the moment. So I learned a lot from them. Even in that situation where they didn't have a lot, they showed me that not having a lot doesn't mean anything if you do the right things with what you do have.
I love that as a lesson because so often people operate from a position of scarcity. And the idea is, I don't have enough for myself, so I definitely can't give anything to anyone else. But when you operate from a position of abundance, things always seem to work themselves out. So it sounds like that's kind of how your upbringing was, is we don't have a lot, but we know we have more than enough, and not focusing on the obstacle of not having a lot, but focusing on we've got everything we need and it's going to allow us to help somebody else.
Absolutely. Yeah, we never starved. I can tell you that for sure. And it was a blessing to have those kinds of parents who not only taught us those lessons, but also encouraged us to chase our dreams and always told us what we could do and not what we couldn't do. I think I'm a product of that as well, because I'm operating in a realm, in a field that is full of a lot of big dreamers. And the only way that you get anywhere in creative arts and media is if you buy into the idea that you can do anything that you set your mind to. And I wouldn't have lasted this long and survived so many of the ups and downs if it hadn't been for the encouragement that I had from my parents, and my sisters continue to encourage me today. That was the other lesson I learned that really helped me get to where I'm at today.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And so what were some of the things that you were doing to earn money? Was there like an allowance? Were you 16 years old and immediately started working at an entity of some sort?
Yeah. When I was younger, I think I had an allowance. But then when I was 15 years old, I started working. My dad and I would go and we would clean the floors, do the whole like wax and clean with the machine on the floors of the store that my mom was the manager of. It was a Christian bookstore, an office supply store here in Tulsa. And every so often we would go. And then when I was able to drive, I actually started a part-time job at that store. And I got involved in retail when I was a teenager in high school, continued working in that job through college and even a little bit after college. So yeah, I started working when I was about 15, and it wasn't traditional, going out and doing lawns and that sort of thing, but it was more finding a job connected to what my mom was doing. That was a blessing that she had that opportunity that I could take. So I was working pretty early on because I had things that I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to put gas in the car and go out with my friends and go to movies and concerts and stuff. I learned the value of having a job pretty early on.
Yeah, I like that too, that it was kind of like a family business, even though it wasn't owned by you all, that you guys kind of kept it all together and earned your income in the same place, which also allowed you guys to spend more time together. And then also you mentioned too, this idea of your mom hooking you up with a job. And I think for sometimes we take for granted how important the network is when thinking about ways to earn money or ways to get opportunities. And there's something as simple as the person that's close to home to you that could know somebody who can help you get yourself going.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Cool. So now let's talk a little bit about, you said you went off to college. So was that always in the plan after high school, or was there's some other options on the table. What kind of conversations were had about the possibility of attending college?
College was always the goal. I always felt like I needed to go to college to get closer to whatever I was going to do after school. So again, we didn't have a ton. We were still probably at the lower end of the middle class spectrum and not feeling like we had nothing, but at the same time, understanding that we didn't have a ton to work with. So I ended up being blessed with some scholarship money, some grant money, and I did have some student loans, unfortunately, like a lot of people do. But I was given the opportunity to go to one of the finest private schools in the country, the University of Tulsa, right here in town. In hindsight, I probably had no business being there, financially speaking. But again, I did really well in high school. The grades allowed me to get in and get some scholarship money. It took me several years to pay off the debt on the loans that I did take out. But what I learned in college really helped me understand who I was, what I wanted to do, and helped me point myself in the right direction in terms of being involved in communications and creative arts and media, and just a lot of great friends that I still have today that I met through those experiences. So yeah, college was always the plan. I didn't even really know what it would look like to not go to college. I always felt like that needed to be connected to my future. I know that's not the case for everybody. And in fact, in today's day and age, there's a lot of great ways that young people can go and not have to actually go through the college experience. There's a lot of new opportunities that weren't there, technologically speaking and business speaking, that there are today. But for me, that was always the plan, and God really blessed us. I was the first person, I think, in my entire family on both my mom and dad's side to graduate from a 4-year university. So I was really blessed to have that opportunity, and I would never go back and change a thing.
That's really awesome to be the first timer, but I think it also comes with some pressure for a lot of young professionals now that are the first to graduate. I think a lot of families sometimes are like, oh, you graduated, which means you're going to get a better job, which means you're going to earn a better income. Did you feel any of that kind of pressure as it pertains to like now you have this fancy education that others didn't have in your family?
It wasn't the pressure from them. I didn't feel any pressure from them. I felt pressure that I put on myself because I had a lot of big dreams. And again, when you have that college education, you do feel like you have to prove that you deserve to be there, that earning that degree actually meant something. And so, yeah, it was more pressure I put on myself.
Gotcha.
Yeah, my family had never put pressure on me at all. There was nothing like that at all. They just very supportive, always just like, hey, Chad, whatever you feel like you need to do, we're here for you. We're here to support you. And even if that meant not working in my profession for a few years after, trying to figure it out because there was struggle right out of college. I thought I was going to go one direction. I actually thought I was going to get involved in sports media, sports PR. I didn't get a job that I thought I was a shoo-in to get, and I had to reset. And I worked in a retail job that I mentioned earlier. I worked there for a little while, took another couple different jobs, struggling to kind of figure out if this multimedia creative arts thing was for me or not. And so it was a lot of patience and perseverance to figure out if I'd made the right choice or not, because there was a lot of times when I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. Most people have suffered from some sort of financial struggle and had some financial failures. And it sounds like this was a pretty tough time in your life. Is there anything specific as it pertains to financial mistakes that you made that you would like to point out to the audience?
Well, I wouldn't say that getting the loans for college was a mistake, but it certainly was a burden. And I think that early on, I was kind of fast and loose with my money. I think I had a little bit of the money grows on trees mentality. And I think the first mistake I made was probably not doing a really great job with my first checking account and overspending. To be honest, that was one of the first things that I really had to figure out is how to budget and how not to overspend. And then my first credit card, that was a whole other debacle. Being in a family that didn't have a lot of money, we didn't have those issues in terms of we were never able to overspend, or there weren't really credit cards. I didn't have that example of what it looked like to take care of those things. So it wasn't really like my parents being derelict of duty and teaching me those things. It was just that it was a different world now. It was a different experience. I was dealing with things that they never had to deal with. So it was a learning curve for me. And honestly, it wasn't until I got married and my wife, who is much better at math and bookkeeping than I am, that I really started to figure it out. And it was like, hey, honey, we've got to get this figured out. This is serious. And so it's not something that you want to admit, but that was my journey. I was struggling so hard to figure out what my life was going to be like. For me, if like you get so honed in on one part of your life that it's easy for you to maybe forget to take care of your body or take care of your finance or take care of your spiritual walk. And so I found myself in that trap for a little while. And my wife actually was the one who helped me figure out how to dig out of it.
I love that. I like the transparency with which you shared, because I think so many people deal with that. Is you talked about, like you said, this idea that there was no room for overspending initially in your childhood. So it wasn't a problem and there was no reason to be educated about this because there was no option for overspending. So it's kind of like making light of the situation that you did have funds. And I think a lot of times people think of the struggle and say, like, there's just not enough money to go around. And that's why I have credit card debt, or there's just not enough of this or that. But once again, it's like sometimes you just have to work with what you have. And then other people decide to work beyond that, or you get an opportunity and now you feel like, okay, I'm in the next level. And then you don't really know what to do at that next level. And that causes the mistakes that lead to credit card debt or having a hard time being able to figure out the budget. If there was never a need for a budget because there was only enough to make the basic things met, we talk about like the gap in financial literacy. It's just various life experiences. And so I really appreciate you sharing that with the audience, because I think it really sheds light on the fact that this is not just something that any one person goes through, but it's pretty common for our age group to suffer with that sort of thing. And then you also talked about starting to work on finances when someone else came into the picture. So a lot of times a significant other comes into the picture and it's like, okay, I want to do right. I want to be better for this person. I want to work together. And there's that outside motivation that's going to cause us to flip the switch and say like, okay, we got to make some changes.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how you went about having conversations with your wife and you guys kind of got transparent and naked about the finances and how you worked through creating a plan together, because teamwork is a whole new dynamic of money management.
Right. When I married my wife, she was already 2 or 3 years into her teaching career. And so she had an established job. I had a job as well, but was working towards the idea of doing other things as a freelancer. For the first 3 or 4 years of our marriage, we were both employed by one place, one employer. And it really started off with, hey, we need to take a look at budget and we've got to figure out how much we can spend. And we got to look at the balance of the checkbook here. We got to get that consolidated and in the same space. And then we've got to be smarter about how we use our credit cards. And honestly, where it really got tricky for us, again, was about 3 years into our marriage. I was working at a radio station. I was running a radio station. I've done everything you can imagine in multimedia. And I had this blessed opportunity to work at this radio station for a while and run it and really kind of direct the entire programming. And so the job went away just unexpectedly. And I had to really figure out what I was going to do next. And that was the point where I said, you know what? I have certain things that I want to do with my life. I have certain goals and dreams. I need to pursue them now. And I need to talk to my wife. We need to get on the same page. And so I started pursuing production work and working on some different projects that involved writing books and developing a TV series or getting involved in film production and that sort of thing. A mass array of things that go along with that particular profession. But I had to have her support and her understanding that it wasn't going to be an overnight thing. So we had to get on the same page with that. And her having the job that she had and the insurance allowed me the freedom to do and pursue some things that probably weren't normal for most married couples. So we had different transitions. Or the very first one, I had to learn how to be better with my money. The second one was us figuring out how we can manage me pursuing a career that had a lot to do with freelance work where my money wasn't always the same amount from month to month. It was tricky then. It's honestly still tricky now, because as long as you're working in a business where it's a project to project business, there's never guaranteed income from one year to the next. It can fluctuate. So we have to be very intentional about looking at our budget from year to year and even adjusting sometimes in the middle of a year. It really keeps us on our toes. And we've been great at it at times. We have 3 kids now, so that presented a whole other set of challenges. But we've learned a lot. We still make some mistakes here and there, and we're certainly not perfect. But the number one thing is that we trust God and we still give, and then we just keep moving forward.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how you handle things now. Is there like a set of principles that you live by or some sort of model that you use as guidance to help you in life and in organizing finances?
Yeah, we have a budget. We always have a budget each year that we look at and projections based on, she actually, for the most part, We've been married almost 20 years now. At the end of this year, it'll be 20 years. And out of those 20 years, she has had a job, I want to say probably 16 or 17 out of those years. And so we always know, okay, well, here's how much you're making. Here's my projected income based on these projects, based on this client that I have for the next 12 months. And so we can budget that way. We also make sure that we adhere to, there's a Christian principle called tithing. We give the first 10% of what we give back to our church. And we try to give and donate to other causes, whether it's friends that we know that are going on a missions trip or helping, just in certain, we have a World Vision child that we sponsor, things like that. But we make sure that we do that first because we really do believe in the principle of giving first and not giving out of fear or lack, but giving out of your belief that things are going to be taken care of. And so that's one of our principles that I really believe has really helped us a lot and really allowed us, even in times when they were tight, to still be on top of the margin. We don't have like a system in the sense that we don't have a particular plan or a book that we've read, but we just try to take a look at each year. Sometimes we have to revamp it midway through the year. If I lose a client or if I pick up a client, we might have extra budget that allows us to go on a vacation, or there might be less budget that makes us not be able to go on a vacation. So we have to adjust up or down depending on my work because my wife's work is always steady. So it's not normal. We have a lot of 2-income families out there that they have a regular job that they go to every day. We have a little bit of a different circumstances that requires us to be even probably more vigilant than the average household.
Yeah, I love that you talked about this idea that your finances are kind of like, I would describe them as almost ever evolving. So when you're kind of in an entrepreneurial role, that the income is fluctuating and you kind of got to stay on your toes and you need to be aware of what the income is, especially when you have the responsibility of family members counting on you in the form of 3 little children. So I love the way that you're kind of like, oh, okay, sometimes it goes up and then other times it goes down. And the biggest thing that it sounds like you and your wife do are you're constantly in communication and you're constantly checking back in and reminding yourself like, okay, hey, where are we now? Based on our plan, it's kind of like, here's our baseline.
Right.
So just that constant check-in, I think is a really important part of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So we're coming to the end of our time together, and I like to do this thing I call the final sprint. I'm going to rapid fire some questions at you. Are you ready for them?
I don't know. We'll see.
Good answer. All right, you got $20 in your pocket right now. What do you do with it?
Save it until I really need it badly.
I like it. What's your worst money habit?
Reckless spending at convenience stores.
Convenience stores? What do you buy at the convenience stores?
I get thirsty a lot.
Yeah. Drinks at convenience stores.
You're an Olympian, so I feel bad about admitting that I might drink certain beverages at a convenience store that are not really great for me. So forget that we had this conversation.
It's on record now. It's too late. Something you do for fun that doesn't cost anything.
Play catch with my son.
I love it. Finish this sentence. That awkward financial moment when.
Ooh, this isn't rapid fire, Lauren. This is hardcore probing right here. When my wife saw my first checking account statement.
Ooh, I can imagine that being an awkward moment. It's like, I love you, I love you, I love you. Do you still love me back?
It's like, you better be glad we're already married or this could have been a problem.
All right. So at Worth Winning, we have a motto, and it is, you don't have to get it all right to be all right. Because I really believe that though we all make mistakes, the mistake is not what's crippling, but it's our inability to be open and deal with those mistakes. So with all that said, you have made it to the finish line. You've shared so much wonderful information with us. And now you get to stand on the podium. You won the final sprint. So step right up here, accept your gold medal, and go ahead and shout yourself out. Tell us all about what projects you're working on, how we can support you, anything you want to tell us about Chad.
This is my favorite part right here. Probably everybody's favorite part, right? I'm working on a lot of film projects. And one thing you can do if you want to know more about one of the recent things I worked on, there's a film and a book. It's a documentary called The Battle for Brandon. It's an amazing story about this family who overcomes some incredible adversity. You can check that out at thebattleforbrandon.com. And the documentary is still not released yet. It will be soon. but it was actually narrated by Jennifer Garner, the actress. So
Wow.
really, really excited about that. And the book is also available. And then I have a website that I actually curate a lot of interviews that I've done over the years through my journalistic efforts and writing efforts. It's actually called christiansportsjournal.com. A lot of really cool inspirational interviews and different content there. And then I also have my own podcast, which Lauren, you will be a guest on soon. It is called the CSJ Podcast. It's available on Anchor. It's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts. Definitely check that out. We just launched it, and we have 3 or 4 podcasts out, but the goal is to have one a week in the next few weeks. So check that out, and you can kind of get a little bit more about me that way. And then one final thing is if you're interested in reading some inspirational books that I've written, you can check out my Amazon author page.
It sounds like you have a lot going on.
You have to in this business, or you won't make it. I mean, you have to have half a dozen or more things either in development or actually paying you to work on them. So that's just the nature of what I do. It keeps me busy, but it keeps me excited and having a lot of fun because I love to tell stories. I love to be a part of the creative process. So I can't think of a better profession for me to be in.
I love it. It's like the multi in multimedia.
Yep. That's a good point. That is a really good point.
All right, Chad, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Lauren. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Chad's Money Memoir today. Our goal is always to provide you with information that is worth listening to. We want you to walk away with information that helps you take action in organizing your finances. Chad gave us some really good nuggets today, including the importance of having a budget, but also tips on how to manage a budget in a marriage and when your finances are unpredictable. Our word of the day today, fluid. Chad shared with us how he and his wife have a budget they create every year based on their projected income. But we know things don't always go as projected. That's why they revisit their budget throughout the year to find out if they're doing what they should be, making more or less than projected, what kind of adjustments need to be made. You got to be fluid to do that. Budgets don't have to be set in stone. So it's really important in how you think about your budget. Stay cognizant of it, stay aware of it, stay connected to it, but realize that it's not the Bible. Thank you for tuning in today. If you have financial questions, suggestions for guests, or would like to share your own money memoir, don't hesitate to reach out to us. worth-winning.com.